Hi everyone and welcome to a special Games Done Quick edition of ThursDev. I'm Luke and welcome. So the week of this video's airing is also the week of the Summer Games Done Quick 2016 Marathon. In a small departure from the norm, this week's video is less about the development and design of video games specifically as much as it is appreciation of a popular but esoteric part of gaming. I've already done a video on speedrunning before and why you should appreciate them as a game developer or someone interested in game development in general, so today I'd like to offer a very basic primer on the more common themes of the average speedrun, what you're likely to see during a marathon or stream, and what certain concepts really mean and imply. This is going to go off the assumption that you've already got a passing interest in speedrunning. Maybe I compelled you to become interested in speedrunning through you watching my earlier video on why the game developer or hobbyist should take speedruns seriously. Or maybe you just like that the SGDQ marathons are the single most profitable video game related charity event in the world. Regardless of your motivation, I'm assuming you're already checking out speedruns casually. The first thing I'd like to talk a little bit about today is the difference between speedrun categories. There are two factors that you'll likely want to focus on when first deciding what kind of speedrun interests you the most: percentage and glitch usage. Both of these are most simply subdivided into subcategories, though as you go into the rabbit hole you'll likely find many more for the games you start to follow regularly. Percentage refers to the completionist aspect of a game. Generally speaking, you'll hear a game run referred to as a 100% run, or an any percent run, or maybe a low percent run. What this implies is that the player will be attempting to either not only complete the run, but also collect every collectible in the game in a 100% run, collect the optimum number of collectibles to complete the game as quickly as possible in any percent, or avoid collecting any items that aren't absolutely essential to the game in the low percent run. The 100% run is the purist's run. Nothing is left behind, and the onus is on the runner to gather everything in as expedient a manner as possible. This doesn't necessarily mean that the player will go through the game using the intended route, however, especially when diverging from the intended route will lead to early acquisition of an item that significantly increases speed or agility of the player character. Among the above, the any percent run tends to be the fastest, as it avoids unnecessary travel time to collect items that have little or no bearing on finishing the game. This can mean that the player will pick up certain items that are convenient but not strictly necessary, but generally speaking only really attempt to grab items that, without, the game would be otherwise uncompletable. Low percent usually requires more difficult and often roundabout paths in execution in order to beat the game while avoiding anything that doesn't hinder progression. In the low percent run, even items that would generally be considered essential to the completion of the game in an any percent run are eschewed in favor of workarounds, be it through glitches or simply through extremely circuitous routing. Each of these presents some unique challenges to the runner, but I've found that the low percent run often includes the largest number of major exploits and sequence breaks, and can frequently be the most likely to leave the casual viewer completely baffled as to what they're seeing, as the accomplishment of a low percent run often necessitates the exploitation of glitches. Now, glitch usage is a fairly broad term, and I'll attempt to explain some of the more prominent glitch types, but in broad terms, a glitched run is one in which the player exploits a glitch or two in the game in order to progress more quickly. Some of the most popular types of glitch that can be found and used in a speedrun are those that facilitate movement. Zips are a method of rapid movement through an area caused by the player character getting wedged into a section of the map that they aren't supposed to be able to access, and the game attempting to eject them to a safe location. Generally speaking, as opposed to making the game unplayable if a player gets stuck in the level's geometry or collision bounds, games will attempt to allow the player to continue moving by ejecting them from the area they're stuck in. Often, if the player manipulates the way they're propelled, this can allow them to travel through walls or on top of parts of a map that they would otherwise not be able to access from the position that they were in. A more extreme example can be found in wrong warps, which confuse the game by manipulating the game's memory to convince it that the player should be transitioning to a different part of the game than the exit that they're passing through should normally take them to. This is particularly useful in longer runs like RPGs, where being able to prematurely get to a dungeon or part of the world map can save multiple hours at a time. Now, not every glitch directly influences movement, however. If you've ever heard the term underflow or overflow in the terms of a game, that means that a certain value in the game can go below its defined minimum value and due to the way many games are programmed, instead of being a negative value, it becomes the highest value possible. This can mean that in 8-bit games, where numbers generally go from 1 to 255, a player can, for example, sell an item that they only have one of, but somehow expend or remove the item during or before the sell action is completed, giving them 255 of that item after sale. It works for more than just items, though. A character's stats can be lowered below their minimum threshold to make them superhuman, for example, as well. As a point of interest, a 16-bit integer maxes out at 65,536, 32-bit at 2,147,483,647, and a 64-bit integer, well, that goes to a few quadrillion shy of 18.5 quintillion. The other word for that is, you can get far more than you'll ever be able to make use of. Now, by definition, most glitches, also commonly known as bugs, are completely useless in a speedrun if not detrimental, but every once in a while someone will find something that blows a game wide open and shaves off a significant chunk of time from the previous record. Many are found completely by accident when a runner or even casual player with the knowledge of the speedrunning scene stumbles upon odd game behavior while playing the game, perhaps messing around doing things that the average player might not. This kind of accidental bug discovery is a surprisingly common occurrence. How many times have you been playing a game casually only to have something misbehave in a game, and suddenly you find yourself moving in some unexpected way, or falling through the world? The main difference between the casual player and the speedrunner is that what the layperson considers a nuisance or an inconvenience is, to the runner, an opportunity for exploration. Some glitches, however, are far from accidental. Many speedrunners spend inordinate amounts of time routing and attempting to break their speed game of choice based on the assumptions made around the type of game, and in many cases the idiosyncrasies of the game's engine. A number of years ago, if you were following the first-person shooter scene, you may have heard of something called bunny hopping. Through the implementation of movement in certain engines, perhaps most notably the Orange Box branch of the Source engine, within which Half-Life 2 and Portal were created, the player could jump with the precise timing to be constantly in the air, while there was less friction applied to the physics simulation than on ground. They could confuse the game into thinking that they were never touching the ground, and their velocity could be increased far beyond that of walking or running speed. Even after patching this particular exploit out of the Source engine, the gaming community sought a way to re-break the game's movement. They realized that a fix that Valve applied to slow the player down was to throttle forward momentum when the player jumped, and apply backward momentum if the player seemed to be moving too quickly. Through some creative thinking, the community was able to figure out that backward momentum would be applied even if the player was already moving backward, leading to the still usable technique of ABH, or accelerated backhopping, an integral part of Half-Life 2 speedrunning. Most, if not every speedrun is the culmination of months, if not years upon years of practice, trial, error, and execution. Active communities exist around a huge majority of relatively popular games, and they trade these tricks and exploits regularly, and through doing so push the times they achieve further and further down. Some games that have been out longer than some of the runners have been alive are still being optimized, and new tricks are being found each year. If you're of the mind that people should be playing games right or as intended, you probably want to focus on glitchless 100% or any percent runs, which are ideal for watching a player complete a game entirely through skillful execution. I found myself early on in my time watching speedruns gravitating towards these, but over time you may wish to start venturing into the land of broken games, where a credits warp ends an entire game in the span of only 2 or 3 levels. Whether you prefer to watch a game in its purest, non-destructive way, or want to see a game deconstructed before your eyes, there are literally thousands of speedruns available for you to consume. Every Games Done Quick Marathon and the European Speedster Assembly each run over a week, 24 hours a day, showcasing some of the most impressive and entertaining runs available, and are entirely worth your time to check out. If you can only spare a few minutes at a time, I might suggest that perhaps one of the first genres of game that the neophyte speedrun viewer should consume is the platformer. Be one of Mario's many games, a classic Metroidvania, or a more contemporary way-forward joint, the platformer game with its simple run, jump, and sometimes shoot mechanics offers some of the most visually impressive tricks while still being fairly easy to follow. The classic single-player FPS is another grand option. Half-Life or its sequels, or perhaps an id game or two, are well worth a close look. Quake, one of the grandfathers of modern speedrunning, is a cool 13 minutes to watch. The RPG or a strategy run is always an endurance race, and though an RPG run fast is still fast, the classics like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy still run upwards of 3 hours a pop, so be ready for an investment, but a technically spectacular one. Now, a few more minor things to learn that might help you understand what people are talking about on any given speedrun stream. You may come across the term RNG in your travels into the land of speedruns. This stands for random number generation, technically, but really has evolved into a blanket term to cover randomness in any game. Any factor that the player can't directly influence is referred to as RNG, and it's generally considered to be the bane of the speedrunner's existence, who relies on careful memorization and execution of difficult tricks. When the game decides to throw a monkey wrench into this, the runner is at the mercy of an often capricious game system. You may also from time to time hear about tricks being frame perfect, pixel perfect, or sub-pixel perfect, which all refers to a trick requiring execution in a position or span of time so narrow that execution becomes extremely difficult. And some other initialisms you may want to be aware of are PB for personal best, RTA meaning real-time attempts, IL individual levels, and TAS or TAS, the oft misunderstood tool-assisted speedrun, which really deserves an episode all its own. No matter what kind of game you decide to watch, however, I hope that some of the information I've imparted today will help you to understand a little more about what speedruns really entail, and that said knowledge might help enrich the experience even a smidgen more. The speedrun is quite possibly one of the most impressive segments of the gaming space, but knowing just how impressive that really is makes it all the more sweet an experience. But that's perhaps enough for now. If you'd rather play than watch and are willing to make a video game part of your life and your daily routine, I'd suggest checking out some speedrun communities that can help you to really begin to understand it from a hands-on perspective. I like Reddit's r/speedrun community as a great and accessible place to start, and the forums of Speedruns Live or any of the other individual game communities are also awesome places to get into. For now, though, I hope that you're enjoying the rest of your day. If you aren't already watching the SGDQ's 2016 marathon and it's still live when you see this, I strongly suggest checking out twitch.tv/gamesdonequick and catching as much as is left for you to see, or to check out the VODs otherwise. Thank you, as always, for watching. May your runs be swift, and may the RNG gods roll in your favor. Take care.